All right, let's talk fractions. Now, I know that word can make some people a little nervous, but what if I told you that you already get it? I mean, really. At their heart, fractions aren't about complicated math at all. They're about something we all do, probably every single day. So let's dive in.
It all starts with sharing food. Seriously, picture this. You've got one roti, or pizza, or maybe a cookie, and you want to share it with your friend. What's the first thing you do? You try to cut it right down the middle to make it fair, right? So you both get an equal piece. That simple act, that's it. That's the beginning of fractions.
And that's really the first big idea we need to lock in today. At the end of the day, fractions are just a language we came up with to talk about dividing things up equally. You could even call it the language of fairness.
Let's pull an example straight from our source material. Shabnam asks this really simple question. If one roti is divided equally between two children, how much roti will each child get? Think about it for a second.
The answer's obvious, right? Each kid gets half. And this right here, this is just how we write that down using math. 1 divided by 2, or 1/2. The top number is the one thing we're sharing, and that bottom number, that's just how many people are in on the share. Simple as that.
Okay, so now let's get into the one thing that trips almost everyone up when they first learn about fractions. It all comes down to what happens when more people want a slice. So, just take a look at these two pictures. On the left, you've got one roti being shared by two people. Pretty big pieces. On the right, that same roti is being shared by 4 people. Just by looking, you can tell the slices have definitely changed size.
So let me ask you a direct question. Which piece is bigger? The 1/2 piece or the 1/4 piece? You don't even have to do any math. The answer is right there in the picture.
And this is the absolute key. More people sharing means smaller pieces for everyone. The bigger that bottom number gets, the more ways you're splitting it, and the smaller your individual share is going to be. That's why 1/2 is way, way bigger than 1/4.
Okay, let's test that idea one more time to make sure it sticks. What if we compare sharing with 5 people versus 9 people? On the left, everyone gets 1/5. On the right, they get 1/9. Which piece do you think is bigger?
And check this out. Arvin from our source text totally nails it. He says if I share with more people, I will get less. So 1/9 is less than 1/5. Boom! You've got it. It's just common sense.
Okay, so we have that core rule down. Now, let's give a proper name to these basic pieces we've been talking about. You know, the 1/2, the 1/4, the 1/9. In the world of math, these are called fractional units.
A fractional unit is just the official name for one of those equal pieces. So if you slice a cake into 8 equal parts, one of those slices is your fractional unit. In this case, it's 1/8. Think of it as the basic building block.
Let's switch from roti for a second and look at this snack called a chikki. Here we have one whole chikki bar, and it's already divided into 4 equal squares. Each one of those little squares is a fractional unit. It's 1/4 of the whole thing.
And you can see the pattern, right? It's super simple. 1/2, 1/3, 1/6. You could even have 1/100th. These are all fractional units. They always represent one piece out of a certain number of equal parts.
So now that we have our building block, our fractional unit, we can move on to the really cool part, using it to build or measure absolutely any fraction you can think of.
You know, you can actually try this yourself. Just grab a strip of paper. That's your one whole. Now fold it right in half. You've just made 2 1/2 units. Fold it in half again. And now you've got 4 1/4 units. See? You're physically creating these fractional units.
Okay, let's stick with that 1/4 piece we just made by folding the paper. This single piece, this is going to be our building block for what comes next. It's our unit of measurement.
So, what if we take 3 of those 1/4 units and we put them together? Well, we just count them up. 1, 2, 3. We now have 3 of the fourths. We call that 3/4, and we write it as 3/4. We just built a whole new fraction using our basic unit.
And this is where we can finally bring in those official math terms. The bottom number, the denominator, that just tells you the size of the unit, how many pieces it takes to make a whole. And the top number, the numerator, that's just a simple count of how many of those pieces you actually have.
So far, we've pretty much been thinking about fractions as pieces of things, pieces of roti, strips of paper, bits of chikki. But fractions are also just numbers, and like any other number, they have a specific home on the number line.
Check this out. We can put our fractional units right on the line. 1/2, Well, it sits perfectly halfway between 0 and 1. And if we count 3 of those half units, we land on 3 halves, which is exactly halfway between 1 and 2. 5 of them gets us to 5 halves, or 2.5. They all fit perfectly.
And that gives us another super simple rule. If that top number, the numerator, is bigger than the bottom number, the denominator, it just means you've got more pieces than you need to make one whole thing. So the value of that fraction is always going to be greater than 1.
So think about that journey. We went from the simple idea of sharing a roadie all the way to seeing that fractions are just numbers that can be bigger than 1 with their own place on the number line. Which leads me to a final question for you. If a fraction is just another type of number, what else can we do with them? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.